The earlier messages, which changed the world in the area in which the prophets were sent, those messages we know have changed, and even the prophets who brought them, their names are now lost. We just know in general because Allah told us in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنْ يَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. I've sent to every nation a messenger, calling people to worship Allah alone and to avoid the worship of false gods. This essential message has been, as I said, preserved in Islam in a way that it was never preserved before. Not because the message was different, because it was the same message, but because of the fact that there would be no other prophets who would come after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So therefore that message now had to be protected. It had to be preserved in a way none of the earlier messages were preserved.
As far as Muslims believe, and now we're talking about sharing belief, right? Muslims believe, yes, that there is only one God. There is only one human race. Even though we've been told there is a variety of races, no, there's just one. And therefore, the need of human beings to worship God, to live in accordance with God's will, that need is fulfilled through God revealing one religion. Because human beings don't have different needs in that sense. We all have the same emotions, the same psychology. Our organization of societies may differ because of technology and things, but basically it's the same. We have a family structure, we have communities, we have states, wherever you go. In history, no matter how far back you go in time, you know, it is the same situation. Human beings have not changed. So we believe that when God created the first two human beings, Adam and Eve, He taught them, He informed them of how He wanted them to live. That we call religion. How He wanted them to live, because He gave them guidelines in terms of how they should relate between themselves, interpersonal relationships, how they should relate to the world around them, which God has provided for them, and how they should relate to God. That religion is not restricted to just how you relate to God, but how you also relate to each other. How do you deal with the environment around you? So religion, the religion of God, was taught to Adam and Eve, the first two human beings. First two human beings who Allah or God created, they were taught the religion of God. As time passed, people multiplied, people strayed away from that original religion, made changes, corrupted, added, and God sent messengers, prophets, to bring people back to that original religion. And as people spread to different parts of the world, of course the prophets were sent to the different parts of the world, always calling them back to that original religion. Islam holds, as Muslims claim, that that original religion was Islam. That Islam itself means submission to the will of the Creator, Sustainer of this world. the one God, who in Arabic his name is Allah. That one God who is not material of the creation, but the Creator himself. So submission to the will of God, meaning submission to the commandments and instructions of God, that is what Adam and Eve were told to do. And this is what describes that final revelation of that same religion according to the teachings of Islam. So we believe, really, yes, there should be one religion. But human beings are free to make their own choices. Human beings are free to choose for themselves what they feel is best for themselves. And in the end, they will be accountable to God for their choices.
So for the person who believes, yes, God did prescribe a way, does it make sense that that way should be different for every people when people are the same? No. If people, human beings, are the same for the last 100,000, 500,000 years, however long human beings have been on the earth, if they haven't changed, why then should God prescribe one way for one set of people and another way for another set of people? That's not logical. The logical thing is that God would prescribe the way which is appropriate for human beings, from the time the first human being is created till the last human being on the face of this earth. That is the logical and reasonable way. Basically, it is Allah's destiny that people are born in different religions. If a person is to follow that religion merely because, as I said, of inheritance, then they cannot be sure that what they're following is in fact the correct religion. And there's a tendency amongst people in the various religions to follow on the basis of custom. No matter what programming you have received all your life, you still have the ability to break that programming and to choose what you know to be right. And each and every human being has that responsibility to follow what they know to be right. So if all of the various religions, with very few exceptions, claim that their religion is the true religion, because even after the interfaith dialogues and everybody patting each other on the back, people still will walk away and saying, but our religion is the correct religion, the best way. If they're all correct, and they all say each one is correct, then we have a problem here. They can't all be correct, and each one says that each one is correct, and the others are wrong. It's not going to work. Either one is correct, and all the others are incorrect, or they're all correct, but they all have to be saying the same thing. They all have to agree, but they don't. So the reality is that only one is correct. And the idea that only one is correct makes sense not only from the point of view of looking at the religions themselves and what they claim, but looking at human beings in relationship to God having created them in one basic mold. That human beings haven't changed over the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years that they have been on this earth. They haven't changed. When you read the writings in cuneiform of Hammurabi or whatever, peoples of the past, what they wrote about, what they spoke about, the problems that they were faced with, the same problems we're faced with today. When you read the hieroglyphics of the Egyptians, you find the same thing. You read the ancient texts, writings of Jewish tradition, you find the same thing. So human beings have always been human beings. Their needs have not changed. Now, how those needs may be fulfilled may vary with technology and these other factors, but the basic needs remain the same. So when God prescribed a religion, and of course we're working from the premise that God did prescribe a religion, and that it isn't as some people say, that God just created the world and left it to run on its own. And that since they looked around and they saw all the religions are different, that they must all be man-made. That was the other conclusion, right? This is the position of what they're known as the deists. God created the world and left it to run on its own. That position is not logical because it ascribes to God a lack of wisdom. I mean, if one considers God to be the creator, the all-powerful, etc., it's also the all-wise. We don't expect God to function in a way which is obviously considered to be unwise. To have created us and not explained to us what we need to do, that would have been unwise. Just as we in companies, we set up a company, we hire a bunch of people to come and work in this company, but we don't tell them what they have to do. What are they going to do? Are they just going to come into the company, find their slot somehow, some way, and just get in there and work all day, 9 to 5, and then leave? No. They'll go to the cafeteria, drink tea, and chat, gossip, whatever. That's what they would do. Similarly, when you send children to school, if you don't inform the kids what are they supposed to do at the school, what are they going to do? They're going to just go marching into the classroom, sit down, good kids listening to the teachers? No. They'll go to the playground. Wouldn't even bother to go inside the school. Go to the playground, they play all day. That's if it's not explained. So we have to explain. We know it's necessary to explain so that things will function the way we want them to function. Similarly, if God created human beings and didn't tell them what they were supposed to do, in other words, give them a religion, then who would find their way? It is basically the same as saying really there is no God. To say that we don't have a religion is ultimately the same as saying really there is no God. We're not really sure. So the deists are really agnostics, those who say, I'm not really sure, there might be a God or maybe not. They really belong in that camp. So for the person who believes, yes, God did prescribe a way. Does it make sense that that way should be different for every people? When people are the same? No. If people, human beings, are the same for the last 100,000, 500,000 years, however long human beings have been on the earth, if they haven't changed, why then should God prescribe one way for one set of people and another way for another set of people? That's not logical. The logical thing is that God would prescribe the way which is appropriate for human beings, from the time the first human being is created till the last human being on the face of this earth. That is the logical and reasonable way.
A human being, regardless of who they are, or where they are, or what they do, will have this curiosity. They'll want to know, why am I here? How did I get here? And do I have a purpose? And if so, what is it? The only one who would really be able to answer that question would be the Creator himself. If there is a Creator, it would be up to him to tell us why we were created and what he expects from us and what this life is really about. Allah has shown the people from the time of Adam until right now, has shown the people what he wants from them. And it's a very simple thing, and that is that worship be for him alone without any partners. In fact, we know this life to be a test from Almighty God. That's why we're born, and that's why we die, because there has to be a beginning and an end for us to be tested on. The next life, after this life, no one will ever die again. A bad person or a good person. Both are brought back, and they continue to live in the next life, either in good shape or not so good shape, depending on how they did on the test. And that the person who's doing this is a servant, a worshiper, a slave, one who really worships. Now, along the way, we find that there are going to be some tests based on what's called rights and limits. There are rights. God has the first right of all, the right to be worshipped alone without partners. The rights of the prophets to be obeyed by their followers.